Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This is season 9. We're talking about the brand called You, and I have to tell you, today is the 100th episode. This is the 100th episode of my podcast. Cue streamers and balloons and all those things. I'm in a celebratory mood. I'm really, really honored to have made it this far, and I thank you so much for viewing or listening. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your reviews and subscribing and the questions that you sent me in the DMs. It's my pleasure to make this podcast every week for you. So we have something special today. I am actually having a guest interviewer come on, and she's going to work with me to help me to share a little of my origin story with you. I thought it might be helpful, and maybe you'll hear something in that which is beneficial to you and is illustrated by some of the struggles that I had and some of the wins and, let's just say, general adventures. So I hope it'll be a really good treat for you to have me turn the tables a little today. I want to introduce Sani Nielsen. She is a copywriter and message strategist. She is a consultant to big names like Jay Abraham and digital marketer, as well as to small and mid-sized businesses around the world. Her motto is convey the right message to the right person at the right time, and you will get that next yes. I had the pleasure of meeting Sani at with my podcast producers when she was in an interviewing contest and won. And I hope you'll enjoy hearing her insightful questions and comments as we talk today. So see you on the other side.
So Samantha, as we jump into this, I really want to go all the way back really to the beginning. Plenty of people kind of start in the middle of their story, mostly because it's like the big hook story. But I know for you, and I know for your readers and listeners, if you're reading it, on your show notes or listening to it in the podcast, they really want to know the full origin because so many people are exactly like you. So please take me back to the beginning and really tell me how you came up in the business and really started getting your feet wet inside the business world.
Well, I think the place that I usually start is my background coming from the South. I'm very Southern. My family was a military family, so we moved around a lot. We had lived overseas, so I had a lot of exposure to other cultures. And when I was in high school, I got really interested in theater and really international studies, politics and things like that. So I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which is, I would go there again and again if I had my life to do over, just an amazing educational experience. And I studied theater and Russian language. And then I went overseas to Russia to study theater. So you can hear that I had a heavy arts background. I didn't really have any interest in business whatsoever. I saw myself as being a film or theater director. And that's really what I did. And just kind of by accident of fate, I happened to be in Russia when people were looking for Russian speaking Americans they could trust to work in their businesses. And I was eventually hired by the people from the Coca-Cola company. I think people get hired to do marketing because I don't think they think you need to know anything to do the job, which is, of course, not true. But whatever it is, I had an amazing education in marketing through my work with the Coca-Cola company. And in the field, I had many adventures and incredible accomplishments. When you're in the field with a corporation, you're very near the point of sale. And so you have tons of accomplishments and all kinds of things happening. So we did the first under the cap promotion, like where you open the cap and see if you've won a prize under it. We did, we launched brands. I know, it's amazing. We launched brands. I would pick up the phone and call the representatives of Sony or British Airways and say, hey, we want some prizes for our event that we're going to be doing. Can you contribute them? Yes, they gave them for free. Just all kinds of stuff. So I had a lot of power and responsibility at a young age working in the company. I had like a staff of 20 people. We put up the first lighted signs. I was the key accounts person. So I worked with accounts like the Kremlin and Hard Rock Cafe and, all of these names that you've heard of where a lot of beverages sold. So I was in marketing and also sales. And then I got noticed by the chief marketing officer during one of his tours of the globe and kind of tapped to come to Atlanta to be at headquarters. And what I have since learned from other people who have come from the field to headquarters is that nothing really happens at headquarters, and it's kind of where creativity goes to die. And it's a difficult place because it's so high level strategic that you almost feel like you have no influence over the point of sale. So I began to get very, very, very depressed while I was there, because there just was not enough happening for me. I didn't feel enough agency in my own work or career or life. And over about a year and a half, I just started to kind of fade. And around me, other people were doing that. And in what we would now call a very, very toxic work environment, there was a ton of sickness happening, health challenges in the people that I was around. And I just decided to leave. And so I left. I completely left. And I remember packing up my stuff and just leaving the building and having people look at me in shock, because when you leave a position like that, no one supports you. That is a crazy idea.
Yeah, that seems so foreign to go, you were at Coca-Cola. That is, yeah. I mean, I know plenty of people who would be like, I would kill for that position.
Dream job.
So tell me just a little bit, because you talk about this kind of toxic environment, and you were so separated from the creativity that you had on that kind of boots on the ground space.
Yeah.
What really was the thing, that catalyst point, right? Because it's a dream job. So what really was kind of that tipping point for you that said, it's time for me to go?
Well, they say that people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. So I had a boss who said to me, I really want you to bring your theater background to your work. I want you to be more, creative. And what creative people know is that there's a lot of vulnerability involved in it. You kind of offer new ideas, and sometimes they get shut down. And so I thought, oh, not in this environment. I'll never be creative here. So one time my buddy and I went to lunch, and we'd had an idea for something, and we discussed it at lunch, and we were really excited about it. I thought, oh, we can present this. It would be easier. Let me make a PowerPoint just so it'll be easier to explain our idea. Now that's how geeked out corporate I am, is I make a PowerPoint. And I would do that today. I'm just a PowerPoint geek. So anyway, I was like, let's make a PowerPoint. So we took it to our boss, and she looked at it. And instead of saying, I hate this idea, I love this idea, whatever, she looked up and she said, how long have you been working on this? Like we'd been scheming behind her back to steal her job. Now, that's not a crazy idea. People had tried to steal my job from me multiple times. It was like Survivor, both in the field and there. People had literally tried to take my job. So she's not completely off base. But when she said that to me, I thought, oh, I'm done. I'm out of here. Because if people ask me for ideas and I bring ideas and then they are shot down, I'm a conspiracy activist or something, then, it's just not going to work for me. So I left, and I had nothing waiting for me. I took a year off. And during the time that I was off, the people who were my former colleagues started calling me to say, we're at a new place. Would you like to come in and do a consulting thing with us?
That's so interesting. I love that you bring this up, that you had made these relationships during this time in this really big environment, and that people did see the value that you had. And even though they didn't support you as you walk out the door, right? No one wants to raise their head and be like, yay, you. But at the end, they still they internalize it and go, she's onto something. She's got this idea. I need to just remember her name. I need to remember that I know her for any time in the future. It's such a good point.
It's why I always say, don't burn your bridges. I didn't leave and say, and screw all of you. I hope you all go down with the ship. I was just like, hey, listen, it's me. Bye. And those relationships I was able to pick right up. So some of my first consulting engagements were for former colleagues. I also had engagements with the CMO that I mentioned, who I met in the field, went on to create a marketing agency. And some of my first engagements were working for him at that agency. So don't burn your bridges, for goodness sake. You can turn those relationships with your former employer into consulting work.
So once you build, and you jump into the consultancy world, how did that go for you? Because, when you make a drastic shift to go from corporate into kind of I'm my own boss, I have to make this work. How did you manage it? How did you maneuver it as you tried to grow and expand your business?
With difficulty, I would say. So like a lot of my clients, in the beginning, you're like, oh, I don't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to get a job. I'd never looked for a job. I had always kind of stumbled into things. And I realized later, the thing that I would call stumbling into was networking. I knew people who knew people, and I would say, hey, I'm kind of in between things. And they would say, hey, here's a thing. So we have a lot of skills that we don't realize that we have, but I sure didn't have the how to get client skill. I just didn't know what that was. And especially in the beginning, it felt like trying to find a million zillion jobs because when you're searching for clients and you don't know how to do it. So I was like, what do we do? Do we go networking or do we do whatever? And this is in the very early days of the internet. And I would just research it. And I do happen to be able to, clearly articulate my message. Even back then, when I didn't know what I was doing, I would say something like, I help, businesses increase revenues. Like, at least that is a kind of a benefit oriented message, even though it's like very weak and generic. And I would, force myself to go out and meet people and call those colleagues I mentioned. And then from there, meet other people. And eventually that's how I got more and more clients. I had been based in Atlanta and we moved to Arkansas, which is where I grew up and lived there for several years. And the middle of the country is an amazing place for small business because, the coasts are very subject to the rise and fall of the economy and things like that. But the middle of the country, there's tons of just like manufacturing and, good service businesses that have been around forever, lots and lots of family-owned businesses. And I love that kind of business. And that's who I worked with. Then I just, when I arrived in town, I went down to the chamber and I used a thing that I teach all the time, which is when you're new, use new like crazy because you won't be new very often. So I was like, hey, I'm new in town. Who should I meet? And I knew like one person. I went to the one person I knew and I was like, hey, could you introduce me to some people? They were like, of course. Then I met and every person I met, I'd be like, who else should I talk to? And that's how I just gradually expanded my network. And, I can't really say I'm as introverted as some people I know, but I think for everybody, it's scary to go and talk to a new person and ask them if they can introduce you to people. But to me, poverty was scarier. And so I was like out there doing the networking, and that really helped me to expand my relationships. And I'm not going to lie, being able to name drop Coca-Cola helped. So
yeah, for sure. Is there one thing as you're going out there and doing, aside from saying I'm new here, is there anything that you that you kind of like put in your back pocket when you're trying to build that connection? Because saying I'm new here, who should I meet is great. But when you meet that new person, what do you say?
We have a conversation like, how are things going for you? So I would have the brand I had at the time was kind of marketing and maybe international marketing. And I realized like a lot of people weren't really doing international marketing. So I began to hone that as more of just like marketing. And especially in the middle of the country and in most small businesses, like most of them don't do any marketing. They don't, or at least they don't even think of it. Like they'll do a bunch of stuff we would call marketing. So again, they'll do like connect with their buddies, or they'll go make relationships. Like strategic alliances is probably what they'd be doing, but they don't really think of it as marketing. And they'll probably have a salesperson, but they'll almost never have a marketing person. So it was really easy when I would go into these greenfield markets, is what I would call it, like places where there's just like everybody needs what you do. So I would go and talk to them and I would say, hey, how do you get clients or customers? And I was working with all kinds of businesses then, services, manufacturing, whatever. And just how do you grow your business? What are your goals? And a lot of them would say, oh, well, you've got some good ideas. Why don't you come in and help us? And so being able to I think it's probably what you're asking is like conversations in which they trust me to just talk with them about their business. The other thing about small business is they usually don't have somebody to talk to about it. Like they'll have buddies and networking and stuff like that, but they rarely can you sit down. And I'll always say they don't have somebody who doesn't report to them. So if you're having a struggle, and like if, for example, if a small business owner is having trouble with someone on the team, they can't talk to anybody else about that because that turns into some gossip. And if they're like worried about kind of their numbers, they don't want to talk to the team about that because that'll alarm everyone. So they don't really have trusted advisors who they can turn to and say, hey, here's some things. And in the beginning, I didn't have the breadth of experience that I have now, but a lot of times they would ask me something and I could say, I could give them answers that made sense to them. And then eventually, now it's been like 20 years. I've talked to so many kinds of businesses. I've been inside of so many businesses, which again, most people haven't. So if they're asking me something, I've seen that in so many other kinds of businesses. So I can give them advice on it. And then I think it feels really good to them to be like, whew, somebody who has a perspective on this can help me.
I think you bring up a really good point about really tapping into your past experiences, right? So that whether you have 20 years of experience, I mean, I don't have 20 years of experience, I have like 10, half the amount of you, but whether you have 20 years of experience or you have 2 years of experience, you still have experience that is valuable to other people. Totally. And I think that's such an amazing point that a lot of people, especially when they're making that transition, right, from corporate into your own business, or maybe you're pivoting your business from I'm doing this kind of thing to a different kind of thing. All of a sudden they go, oh, I'm starting at zero. I have nothing. And I love that you said, I just rely on my knowledge already there. And then how can I apply that to the current situation? Such a good point.
Totally. And I think a lot of people will feel kind of like, do I know enough to be able to do this? Like a little bit of imposter syndrome. And what I would encourage you is that you know more than that person does, even though like they have been running their business for, this is a family-owned business. They're the third generation and blah, blah, blah. Well, they are deep experts in that business, but what they don't know are the things that you know. So you're going to be way ahead of them on this really particular area. And they're going to look for help from that. They're going to recognize that expertise.
Oh yeah. That's such valuable information. Listeners, pay attention. That was such a great, take a note on that one. I mean, I'm taking notes right now. So don't you worry. I'm going to have a full list of stuff here. Now, I really kind of want to go forward in this idea because I know that you personally have, you grew this amazing consultancy. And then, you decided you wanted to pivot the structure of your business, which I know, like for me as a business owner, I've gone through that of should I pivot my business? Should I shift my offer or my product, whatever it is? And that part there can be really kind of daunting. And I know that you have done that and you've mastered that pivot beautifully. And I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about how you were able to, trek that journey with as few scars as possible, because I really don't like pain. And so pain in, physical pain in business pain, any way I can avoid that.
Yeah.
I want to learn from someone like you who really has walked the walk already.
Well, I definitely did it the painful way a lot of times. One of the things that I would do is when I didn't like what was going on in my business, I would take it down to zero. And I hear from people in both my peer group and also clients before who have said, listen, I just want to burn the whole thing down to the ground, or I have just burned the whole. So what they'll do is they'll wrap up with all their clients. And then they'll be at the place where they're like, I don't have any clients or few enough that it feels like zero. And they're kind of in this, it's kind of a clean slate. And for some people, that's like the definition of terror. And for me, and some of the people that I see do this, I've heard people say, I blew my business up and now it's at zero and I'm terrified. Now what do I do? So for me, that's a really peaceful place because I find it the place of pure potential. So I did do that with my business a few times. I had either, if I was unhappy with who my clients were, or if I was unhappy with the work I was doing, or if I started to get bored because this wasn't the right direction, I would just take my business right down to zero for a few months and then just rest. I mean, you heard when I left corporate, I took a year off. I just would stop and rested. And I think that's really been helpful for me. I don't know that I would encourage other people to do that for more than a few days, like I did it for months. But I have a very high risk tolerance. And so for me, that place isn't the worst thing that could ever happen. From there, I was able to see what I really wanted and make better decisions. Now, the second or third or fourth time I did that, what I said to myself was, can we do this, please, without going down to zero? Let's just think about while it's still, while the car is running down the road, can we change the tires without having to pull over? So I have been able to really pivot in gentler ways since then. But I think because I was so amazingly unhappy in my corporate job, I tolerate lack of joy, zero. I won't put up with something not being joyful for a moment. And so that for me is probably a higher value than for other people. Maybe other people are I'd prefer some peace, or I'd prefer, security. And I just can't do anything if it's not joyful. So having said that, what I have pivoted my business many times over the years. And I started, as you heard, I worked with these really large companies. And then my frustration was the large companies don't implement a lot of times. It's like a checkbox for them. And I've talked about this. I know a lot of my listeners and other consultants have had this experience where we're frustrated because you go do this great project and then they don't implement. So that's why I teach to do transformational engagements. And a lot of what you hear me talk about on the show is because of that experience. So then I was like, who really needs to implement this? That's why I started working with smaller businesses, because sometimes it's like the money I pay you would normally go to like buying something for my family. So that money spent really matters, and they need the ROI on it, and it's higher stakes. And I really liked to play in that environment because I want to, I always say like, what I do works. And so if you implement it, it's going to work. And we both want to see that happen. And then I started to get really, really tired. So I was working in person. Those are all in-person engagements. And about 2013, we had the opportunity to move here to Martha's Vineyard. And it's an island that you get to by ferry or plane. There's not a bridge. And so it's not super accessible. And I thought, well, I need to have a really location independent business if I'm going to be there. So while we were still traveling up and back, I began to wean a lot of my clients off of seeing me in person and to do more online programs for, small groups and things like that. And so by the time I got here, I had a remote business, and a lot of people didn't even know that I had moved. But I was kind of fried that year. And so I wanted to kind of take the year off, and I set up enough systems in the business that I was able to have mostly passive revenue streams happening in my business, and just a little bit of client work. And in 2013, I spent a year basically touring New England, doing agility trials with my dog. And it was one of the most joyful years I've ever had, doing something that I love. Some of my happiest moments are being at agility trials with her. And when that year was over and I came back to my business, it was the beginning of what I'm doing now. I really had such a fresh perspective that I was like, okay, now let's dive in and do deeper, more intense work with fewer clients. And I started doing the transformational engagements. I call them business growth partnerships. So I work with a small number of clients for a year. Some of them have been with me for 5 years, but we started out at a year. And we just do a deep dive in their business. And I'm partnered. I call it a partnership. It's not revenue share partner, but it's partnered in that they can call on me for anything that's related to running the business. And that can be like, why does this client drive me nuts, to what's our marketing strategy, to, hey, can you review this copy? Or can you help our sales team? Like, all of those things are involved in that. And I wouldn't have been able to get to that place had I not really rested and figured out what I wanted in the next level.
I think that's really important for you. You bring up such a great point that I really do want to try and highlight that. Because, this is the second time that you've talked about resting in order to like refocus. And so there's two little points that I want to ask you on related to that. Like, when you decided that you wanted to be able to pull back to recharge, but still have the business moving forward, you talked about implementing specific systems. And I want you to just expand for just a minute on, what kind of did that look like to the point where you felt comfortable and confident stepping away? Was it just making sure that your technical background was set up? Did you have contractors that you would outsource certain things to? Just give me kind of a quick, 30-second landscape of what that could look like to help people recognize what a vision of that could look like for them if they decide they want to rest.
I think team is really critical. And probably around 2009-ish, I started to really get my act together around team, because as I mentioned, if it's not joyful, I'm not doing it. And I was like, website building, not doing that. Working with the CRM, not doing that. Writing all of this copy, not doing. So I just found the things, if it wasn't in joy, I was like, I know there's a genius somewhere who really wants to do this. And I found them, and they came on my team. I have people on my team now who are original to that first round. So I have about 10. And right now we're all women and super reliable. So to me, that's the first piece, I would say. And the short version is I put in place the kind of marketing funnel that probably you can't do anymore, where I had an automated webinar. It led people to purchase a product and get in the program. And then I did Q&A calls for them. And there was almost nothing else besides that. So I'm not sure that those are as possible anymore. What's really good is that it says that I have a strong background in internet marketing, because that's the thing that kind of sustained me during that time period. But I had a team who helped me to put that in place and to to do the work and make sure that worked.
I think that's such a good example of what is possible. And I love that you said you still have people on your team from way back when you first did that. And that is a testament to you as a business owner and you as a leader, because you understood the vision that you wanted. And I love the fact that they are still here, because you were going in one direction when you said, I want to pull back. Mm-hmm. But when you decided to rev back up again, you still had a clear vision, and they recognized that, and they were willing to take the journey with you. And I think as business owners, especially as women business owners, sometimes we feel like if we shift, again, that is no one going to follow me, right? Yeah. That whole walking out of Coca-Cola, when you go, no one wants to raise their hand and say, I'm going to come with you, I'm going to support you. And you have just proven there are solid quality people out there that if you as the business owner have a great vision, you will have people there that will support you. 100%. That is fantastic. So when you shifted and said, I want to rev back up now, I mean, it was internet marketing before, and internet marketing has shifted. And I still think there are ways that if a business owner wants to do something more hands-off, there's always new platforms and new opportunities. So don't let that dissuade you listeners at all, because there's always new opportunities. But I really want to hear about how you have built your business now to really allow you to have the joy that I know you want. You've been so adamant about it, which I love, because so many women do not say, I want joy, and refuse to back down from anything less. And I love that you have that stance. So tell me what your business looks like now and how you were able to really get to this point.
So the thing that I teach my clients to do is exactly what I've done in my business. What I talk about a revenue pyramid, where the base of your pyramid is ongoing, basically retainer contracts. And you can have, I think ideally you have, between 5 and 10 of those. They are priced between like whatever it works for you, 25,000 a piece, 100,000 a piece. I have clients who have $480,000 base contracts. So whatever is the bottom of your pyramid, that is the foundation of your revenues. And that, when I stopped doing the agility year and I began to build, come into my business and work in my business, I went from like no intimacy, please, to like, okay, I'm ready. Let's have, deep intimacy work with my clients. And I just mean with that I'm going to get to know someone and I'm going to work with them for a long time so that I really know them pretty well, as opposed to, kind of more short-term project work that I would have ever done. So I started building that then, and that's the way my business looks now. That's what the foundation of my business is those long-term engagements, working with, those clients are consultants who I know their business deeply, and, we're building it. I mean, I have some that we've, from 200,000s, we've now are approaching millions. I have some that came in the 750s and we're now approaching 2 million. So all of the things that I talk about in the podcast, this is literally what I'm doing with my clients. And in the past couple of years, what I noticed was, that deep, intimate work meant that a lot of my, testimonials and also my impact were limited to just a few clients. And I started to feel like I was called, I'm always in touch with my inner voice, and I'm, meditating and praying and really receiving what I think the universe wants for me. And so I would hear, for years, I heard that I needed to be more visible and that I needed to make a bigger impact. And I would always kind of try to understand. Some people might say I was negotiating, but I was trying to figure out, like, what does that really look like? What does more visible look like? And what does like make a bigger impact with more people look like? Because for example, that could have meant like speaking on stages. And I was like, especially earlier, I didn't want to travel. That's pre-pandemic. I really want to travel now, but so you can hear that, like, how I'm feeling, that's the way I build the business. And so I wanted to make a bigger impact and work with more people. And so I created a program where I'm working with groups of consultants. So maybe the long-term thing isn't right for them. Maybe it might be right for them some other time, but for people who wanted to come to me and work in community with other consultants, I created a program called the Path to 2 Million. And so that is the other thing that I do. And you've heard me talk about the 5 ones and really having one offer. And my offers are, I've described, they're not offer, they're aligned like this. So that if anybody does one thing, it leads to another thing and could lead to another thing. So people don't have to continue, but some people do. so it's really, I'm always doing the same thing, no matter who I'm working with. It's pretty much all of the same stuff. I'd say the podcast is the same thing. All of the topics I'm talking about on the podcast are what I'm talking about in my group coaching program and what I'm talking about with my private clients. And a lot of them are listening to my podcast. A lot of them are inspiring episodes. So the topics that I talk about might be something that we just had a meeting about, or I'm thinking I'm going to teach something to a client in a couple of weeks. And so I'll make a podcast about that. So to me, it keeps it very integrated, and it works for me and works for the way my brain works.
So you talk a lot about how you shifted away, from your agility year, and you bring it more to, you want to work with people and you want to be able to make an impact. But you used a word that I guess for me as a business owner, I've often been kind of hesitant on. And it's that idea of intimacy, right? Like, it's kind of scary to open yourself up and to try to connect with people.
So I was in a room a few years ago and I revealed a huge secret. And I thought, I don't know what made me think it was a good time, but I felt like I just couldn't hold it back. I'm in a room full of women, and there was a camera guy there. I made the camera guy leave the room. And I said, I don't trust women. And I haven't trusted women until, very recently. And I don't know how to work with that. And I thought everybody would like throw tomatoes at me and drive me out of the room and things like that. And what everybody in the room did instead, all these women said, I know, right? So what I admire is I see people who don't have this, who didn't have this. So I also had this, up until I was 40, I really never trusted any women. And I met two wonderful people who helped me to kind of, first of all, create amazing relationships with them, my two dear friends, Pat and Donna. And I love them, and we've have great times and things like that. But through my friendship with them and also exploration and other work, what I realized was the degree to which we have internalized misogyny and internalized patriarchy. And having grown up in the South, where kind of mean girls is a thing, and I don't say that like a victim. I was a mean girl as well. I was mean much of my life because that was how we were told to be. So it's really difficult, I think, to be to be trusting when that's the situation. But the truth is, it's not that I didn't trust women. I didn't trust that wasn't the right way to be, and the way that we were all being. And since that time, I have evolved. I've done a lot of work. I've worked with a lot of people, and I'm able to support the feelings and challenges that come up around that. So the thing that you're talking about intimacy, by the way, I would never have used that word like 10 years ago, just never, ever. But being willing to kind of go into a space and talk about fears and shame and guilt and, mistakes and excitement and my hopes and dreams and disappointments, all of those things that you have to be able to talk about in a coaching relationship. And what I find is, if you really want to achieve what you want to achieve in your business, you have to go into all of those things. And I wish it wasn't the case. It would be nice and tidy if it was like, well, sell more stuff, make more money, everything's easy. But who we are and our identity is so wrapped up in the work that we're doing that you're going to have to get in there and dig in and figure out what's in the way of you achieving your goal. And a lot of times what's in the way of you achieving your goal is, I don't trust women. Really? Don't you? Well, let's unpack that. So you have a history of this situation. Well, do you have exceptions to that? Well, now let's look at et cetera, et cetera. And then we get to a place right now where I work almost exclusively with women, because I want to lift women up, because when women succeed, we all succeed. So I've not just a complete 180 on that. I now see that what I had wasn't, I had internalized something that our society preaches and indoctrinates us with to keep us out of our power. And now that I know that, I'm doing the opposite. And I totally trust women and men and everybody, as long as I see that they're trustworthy, and I'm able to empower them to be more trustworthy. And I'm also able to trust myself. So I think that the intimacy that I'm talking about is of people who are willing to dig in and do a certain kind of work that is going to help them to, and the expression I use is be all you can be. It's that wonderful army expression. For you to be the youest you and the most successful you that you can be, you're going to have to get in there and dig in there and figure out what's in the way. And for me, that was like a shameful secret that I didn't know what to do with. And then once I pulled that out and put that in the light of day, I realized I wasn't alone, first of all, that other people felt that same way. We felt that same way, not only because of our own thinking, but because of programming. And I didn't have to be defined by that. And I could actually turn that around and use that to my advantage.
Yeah, that's fantastic. When you had that aha, which I mean, yay, congratulations. Like I really want to clap in the mic, but I'm not going to, listeners, because that would just be loud. But that is such a powerful statement. And it's such an honor to hear that, to know that knowing you and knowing the power that you have, the strength that you have to then be vulnerable enough, be open enough to stand up and say, this is what I'm struggling with. I see this. I feel this. Can be really, really scary. And as a female business owner, I know exactly what you are saying, right? There is, every single one of us has that one thing inside us that goes, is that the thing that's holding me back now? Like whatever that one thing is for you, I am now thinking in my brain, if I were simply to pull it out, just like you did, put it in the light and say, let's unpack this and see what this means. If I were to face that, what could the potential be? And it's amazing to me. So just kudos to you. I love this story. I'm so glad that you're telling me this, because this is just inspiring me so much. And I know it's inspiring your listeners right now. And now I want you to really help me understand that as you started to progress and do this, I mean, even thinking about it right now, I'm a little bit, again, the butterflies are starting to kick up, because as soon as you hear and see and think about the possibilities and the potential, I'm kind of going, well, I don't know how to do that. So what did you do to really, find it, focus on it, and how did you, really overcome this to build the business that you have right now?
It's so much spiritual work. So, my husband is a spiritual director. So I'm really just blessed that our most mundane conversations are about self-exploration, self-development. And to me, it's a lot of it is about having a closer relationship with myself, with God, with the divine. I'm really exploring those things on an ongoing basis. And a lot of times when we talk about hard work in business, people think that means long hours and toiling and grueling at the computer. And the hard work that I'm talking about that is going to be the quantum leap for almost every single business owner is the work to dig in and figure out what are my limiting beliefs? How am I holding myself back? Why do I believe what I believe? Who has given me this idea, and how can I correct it? And so, I mean, it's just years and years and years of work saying, well, why did I make that choice? And why am I doing that? And I think there's, you can really look at things in two different ways. You can look at it as self-blaming or taking responsibility. I personally choose to take responsibility for every single thing that happens to me so that I can then be empowered to do something about it. We joke about it sometimes, but I say that I caused the pandemic because I had certain plans, and then I was kind of like really not wanting to do those certain plans. And then suddenly a pandemic happened and I was like, whew, I don't have to do my thing. And I'm like, oops, sorry, everybody. Now I can say that because I've heard other people say, well, actually, I think I caused the pandemic because blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I can't believe you just said that. So what's amazing is like your most shameful thing that you feel like if I reveal, everyone would abandon me and I'd, live alone in the woods and then die. That most shameful thing is shared by probably everybody in your peer group and most certainly by other people out there. And so I think once I revealed that, I had so much confirmation that it wasn't me and I was bad and wrong. And then I could start to work on it and decide what I wanted to choose to believe. Now, does that mean that I automatically started trusting women? I mean, I started to work more with, I mean, I'd always worked with women. It's not like, I had this big barrier. It was just, I realized I had this kind of like thought in the back of my mind. And I worked with more and more women. And I was like, first of all, they don't do anything that, women had been mean to me in the past. Had men not been mean to me? I don't know. We don't think about it that way, right? We just categorize the thing that we're looking for, right? I'm looking
exactly. We only see what we want to see.
Exactly. So I would be like, oh, that was very, whatever. So I think I started to look for things that validated my new point of view, which is that I have these incredibly deep relationships with women who I love. And again, I see many people who are younger and they have these kinds of relationships, and I'm like, this is awesome. I hope that we've done this step for them. One of the things that I often hear in my meditations is that a lot of the things that we're working on are issues that I'm healing, not just for myself, but for all of the women that I know. And if you believe this, you might believe that we can heal it for our lineage. So I heal it for my mother and my mother's mother, and for all the women that came before me. I do believe that. So it's part of the reason that I'm inspired to do the work, is because it's not just about me. And I also don't want this to carry on, especially if I were a mother. I'm not a mother of literal children. So, but if I were a mother, I would not want this legacy to continue. So a lot of times when I work with my clients and they have an overwork habit, I'll say, do not gift this to your children. Like, let this stop with you. Just like cycles of abuse, this self-abuse cycle has to stop. So what do you want your children to have? And I don't want to have any of these limiting beliefs in the world. I don't want to have the belief that women earn less than men, that we have to work harder for what we have. You have to be twice as good as anybody to get a job. I don't want any of that in the world. So I'm doing what I can do to eliminate that. So what does that actually look like? It looks like discussion, study, insightful, looking inside of myself and seeing if I can get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, so powerful, so powerful. And I know that the work that you've been doing has made such an amazing impact on both the way that you have structured your business, but in how you interact with your clients. And I know that you, as a coach and a consultant to your clients, you've made such amazing transformations, and you are a support to them. As you were growing and doing this kind of self-discovery for your business, as you were structuring it and growing it, who did you turn to when you were, trying to find that guidance, or, when things felt like, man, I either don't know how to structure my business that way, I don't know what I don't know, or I really don't know how to like focus my energy or my thoughts. Sometimes you just need to think outside yourself. Where did you turn to try and find that help?
Well, I mean, I've always believed in having coaches or teachers, or, support systems and things like that. And so I'm glad you asked, because there's really two specific coaches that I want to call out in my journey. And the first one was, I forget when we worked together, but I just had a revenue milestone. This is when a lot of people hire me, by the way. I just have a big, really good thing happen, and you're like, okay, now how do we do this again? Or now that was a lot of work. What? Exactly. If it was so much work, can I do it with less work? Like, whatever is your thing. So I worked with Carrie Wilkerson. I hired her probably because what I was looking for was somebody who was on my wavelength and who coached like me. I have a lot of people who come to me and like, I do this for my clients, but I can't do this for myself. Can you do this for me? So we want to like hire an us. And Carrie is, amazingly talented and has many qualities beyond the ones that I have. But I was called to her because she's like tough love. She's a mom. She's like, she was a school teacher. She's just like, listen, tell it like it is, and then you get the thing done. And I'm like, so want that and really love that in business. And I am that way as well when I work with my clients. So I loved that she did that. There was a line in her agreement that said, I will not chase you down. Like, you do, show up for your meetings and do your work, but I will not chase you down. And I was like, thank goodness, like chasing people down, how exhausting. So I loved that about her. And she's just a cheerleader. She really would celebrate things with you. And it was probably the origin of my own being such a cheerleader for my clients. They know listen, if you have a win, call me and I will celebrate like crazy with you. And I've even said, I have a friend who inherited like $1 million or something and couldn't tell anyone about it because, oh my gosh, like you've inherited $1 million. Like, first of all your friends will hate you and who could identify with that. And so I said, he called me and we just like partied, like, yay, happy dancing and really celebrating. So she's definitely a person like that. And the structure of my business at the time, I had too much revenue sharing with a partner. And she was very good about saying, you need to have money for you. You need to keep something of what you earn. And that was just like exactly what I needed to hear. So she was very much about looking out for me and my needs within my own business. And then the other coach who I would talk about, especially relative to intimacy, is Lindsay Wilson. Lindsay leads with love. And she creates a container in which you can get in there and just work on hard stuff. She's a sales coach for selling really high ticket. And so I love that. And it was wonderful to be around somebody else who has that comfort zone of, super high ticket sales. And she knows that you have to do so much work on yourself and you have to, the things we have to burn up in order to move forward. So she didn't just model amazing sales conversations. A lot of people have like sales call templates or like, outlines and things like that. I know she has something like that, but the nuance in the way that she will lead a sales conversation and role play those. I watched her do a role play one time, completely changed my sales thereafter. It was, I don't know if it's like Aikido or Tango or whatever this is, but she just does this dance with someone where they can go somewhere and she's like, okay, I can meet you there. Okay, I can meet you here. That kind of mastery in sales was amazing. And it was actually in a group of women with her. She made that safe container where I made my big announcement about trusting women. So what my business looks like today, based on both of them, is that it's structured around my strengths. And I can have a sales conversation where I enroll somebody. They in the process, if there's this transference where they're mad at me because their business isn't doing something that it's supposed to be doing, I can handle that like almost anything. So the intimacy that we're talking about is having conflict, difficult emotions, and being able to be present with somebody through that and not taking that on and not, having that be anything except for part of the growth process.
Those are amazing. So I know we're kind of winding down here towards the end of this. I'm sorry, listeners. I know I could talk to Samantha for like the whole day because her story is amazing. I mean, I would love to hear all the crazy stories. So I'm going to poke her one like really fast before we go, because she is this wealth of knowledge. I mean, she's got 20 years of amazing experience in the background. So I'm going to put you on the spot, little hot seat right now for the listeners. Think about in your brain, what are like 3 tips, business tips, life tips, but 3 tips that you could pull from your 20 years of consulting that you think would be super valuable for your listeners?
So if there was just one, and I think this is really critical. If there was just one, I want to emphasize, you've heard us talking about it, but you are the business. You can make the business anything you want it to be. You can build it around your life. That wasn't possible when we were at corporate. You couldn't create your own hours, work certain days of the week, only work with who you want to, work in the business or travel, set it up passively. I have clients who say to me, can I build $1 million business with only one person? Yes, you can. I know people who have that business. So yes, you totally can. Can they, if they say, I hate doing all this stuff and I really like having a team and I feel better when I'm working with multiple people, can I do that business and still bring home enough money that I make good money? Absolutely. You can totally do that. So you get to decide what you want your business to be. And as long as you realize you are exactly what you have right now is what you've made it. So if you don't like it, change it. Create the business that will make you happy. That's the joy part of the joyful and profitable.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We don't even need 3 listeners. Just take that one. It is a jewel, a gem. like that one, you take to the bank, because if you listen to that, and I know that you've listened to all of her other episodes, but you just keep listening to Samantha and you listen to all the stories and expertise that comes with this and with her program. I mean, if you have been inspired by this, as I have been, listen to her and, subscribe to her and reach out, see if you are a fit to work with her. Because I mean, I am so excited to know that you are doing more direct consultancy and coaching, because I am sure that there are, hundreds of thousands of small business owners that are listening to your podcast right now who are hearing their story, further back in your origin story. Maybe they're still in corporate, maybe they're just starting out, maybe they're like me, where I've been in the owning my own business space for like 5 years, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing good, but I know I could be doing better, and I'm not exactly sure where that next step is. You have just given us this wonderful roadmap to say what you want, how you want to build it, how you want to live it is totally up to you. So thank you so much for that wonderful jewel right here. I think that is the perfect cherry on top to this amazing episode. So thank you so much for allowing me to be the interviewer and to share this time with you and just have a wonderful conversation. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It's been great, Sani. I really appreciate you. And with that, we're wishing all of you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate if you'd like this episode, and if you enjoyed the show, why not subscribe? Be sure to click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop.